credit bureau in Boston, where my job was to take the electronic data feed from Dallas and then print out credit reports that applied to Boston. It was a deadly job. I spent a lot of time sleeping and reading cheap novels. And then when I was practicing law, I found it very hard to stay on schedule and meet the various demands of different courts. And there were a lot of nights where I'd be working late in the night or all night at the office to get out a brief, just me and the soda machine. So I had a feel for people that work at night and what they do. I started, when I got seriously interested in photography around 2008, 2010, I started taking workshops at the Maine Media Workshops in Rockport, Maine. It is a great place to learn photography. They have great instructors. They have many projects you can do up there, a lot of photographic scenery, and they give you a lobster at the end of the week. Not a live lobster, but a lobster dinner. It is a truly great place. So one of those weeks that I was up there, I needed a documentary photo project, and I chose the police department in Rockport, Maine. They had exactly one officer on duty at night. This is him, Officer Wesley Butler. I called this the very thin blue line, and I just stayed with him that night. So he would make a traffic stop. I would jump out the other side of his squad car, go in the back, and quietly and unobtrusively take pictures of him doing his work. This is one of the guys he stopped. Checking commercial properties to make sure they're all locked up. And then this very ambiguous shot for the end. Everything that I'm showing tonight, I shot on a series of digital cameras from Nikon. As most people know, the digital cameras are different from the film cameras in that a good film camera can last a generation or two, and a digital camera usually gets replaced or surpassed 2 or 3 years later. So these photos mark a progression, my progression from one Nikon camera to another. And the importance of changing was each new generation was able to handle light and low light much better than the last. And hopefully the pictures also reflect me getting better at photography as we go through. This is a dance performance theater called Junk, because they use a lot of found objects. They incorporate a lot of gymnastics and acrobatics. And this is a ratty garage, storage garage that they use for their rehearsals. I changed it to black and white because the lighting looked so flat and hideous with the fluorescent bulbs that I thought this would compensate for it. This was taken, the lighting director had to turn off all the lights so that he could fix something. So this is taken by the flashlight in somebody's cell phone. This is one of the dancers, I think, looking for inspiration. One of the dancers just before a performance, putting on her makeup. This is the founder of the dance group. His name is Brian Saunders, and he sometimes inserts himself into the shows that he does. This one was called Dancing Dead. And this shot was taken at ISO 16,000. And I'll explain what that is in a little while, but photographers will understand that's exceedingly low light, and there's not a lot of noise or grain in the photo. A couple years later, I went back to Maine Media Workshops, and this time did a project of people who worked the night shift in a couple of restaurants, where they're filling the last orders from customers and then cleaning up. I liked being with them because I had worked in a couple of restaurants before, and I have a feel for the rhythm and the choreography of the different people doing stuff in kitchens where it's usually very cramped, and some of the people have knives that they're waving around and other and very hot things. So how they interact with each other was part of what interests me in kitchen workers. Bartender, obviously. She was shaking out the cloth napkins, and I caught her at just the right moment. One of the kitchen workers in his regular clothes, somehow the look on his face is not in keeping with his hat. I thought it was a great contrast. I decided that I wanted to now turn this into a long-term project of people that work at night. And what I found was that it was very hard to find employers who would let me in to their workspaces at night and photograph the people there. So it took a while to get the project going. One of the early employers who did let me in was SEPTA, the Southeast Pennsylvania Transit Authority, which runs all of the buses, the trolleys, the subways, and the commuter rail system in this part of Pennsylvania. I worked with them for several months until they got tired of me and said they didn't want to do it anymore. But this first night was in their command center, which they staff on a 24-hour basis. And in an emergency, it's their emergency management control. This is one of the supervisors that night in the command center. This is the entire electrical grid for the SEPTA system. So it shows where all the electric buses, all the trains, all the trolleys and subways, where the power is being used. This is another supervisor. His display shows where all the buses, trolleys, subways, and trains actually are at any given time. SEPTA, I don't think they have it anymore, but they used to have something called the money train. And you might be in a subway station 10 or 11 at night, and suddenly a train comes up, but you can't get on it. All the windows are whited out, and doors suddenly open, and 8 or 10 guys would suddenly get off with guns at their hips, carrying bags, and it looked like a robbery, but actually these were the revenue attendants that were in charge of picking up the cash at the kiosks, and where the attendant sits, pick up the money, leave whatever they need for the next day, and take it to the central counting facility later. So this is one of the attendants. They had to stop the train for a few minutes, and he just took the opportunity to get out and look over part of Northeast Philadelphia. This is them at work. A light moment on the train. I spent this night with one of the transit police officers. He's actually a sergeant, and he was checking on the people working at different locations on the system. And we are driving through Center City, Philadelphia. Another transit police officer outside Philadelphia City Hall. If you have never seen Philadelphia City Hall before, it is quite an architectural marvel. It's amazingly run down on the inside, but it looks nice on the outside. One of the SEPTA welders, they're renovating one of the stations, and they're doing it late at night so they don't delay commuters during the day. So at this point, let me talk a little about what I do, because it's very different from what most other people who talk about night photography do. There are a lot of really good workshops and YouTube videos by very good photographers who talk about how they photograph at night. And they do incredibly creative work, none of which helps me, because most of what they do involves using a tripod, slow shutter speeds. They like to catch moving light, like the lights, headlights and the rear lights on cars, or the stars moving. And sometimes they paint things with light using a flashlight. And it's great work, but it's impossible for me to use any of that if I want to photograph actual identifiable people working. So over the years, I figured out how best I think I can do this. I'm not saying this is the only way to do it. I think many of you could come up with better or more creative ways of doing it, but this is what I do. The first thing is I don't just show up someplace and start shooting, photographing. I get permission to be inside someplace. I make sure I know what the rules are. When I'm at the site, I introduce myself. I make sure they know why I'm there, that I have permission to be there. And then I just kind of sit back and I watch and walk around, observe what they're doing, maybe ask a few questions so that I understand what's going on before I start photographing. When I do photograph, I try as much as possible to stay in the background so that I'm not influencing what they're doing. I shoot manual by and large, meaning that I make the decisions for the camera on how fast the shutter speed is, how wide the aperture is, what the sensitivity of the sensor is, and I'll explain that in a minute. The only thing I let the camera do is autofocus, because frankly, my eyes are terrible, and I can't focus as well as the camera can. So I use a point focus. I put the point where I want it, where I want the focus to be sharp, and then I pray. I find that works better. And I also let the camera choose the white balance. I found that I put the white balance on automatic. I find that 9 times out of 10, the camera gets it right. And I can change the white balance in post-production without any damage. I always shoot raw. For non-photographers, that means I use the proprietary format for the camera to capture the digital file. And it allows me to, within reason, to make changes on the computer later on. So I can add some exposure or subtract exposure. I can fix highlights, add a little to the shadows, change color. I can do those things without destroying the image or deteriorating the image, so that the original image as it comes out of the camera will always be there, and I can always make changes in subsequent iterations of the image. I only use available light. If there's no light, then there's no photo. Because my camera is very good at capturing low light, usually I can get away with getting decent pictures in very, very low light. I turn off anything that flashes or beeps because I don't want to distract people from what they're doing, particularly in situations where, you know, they're using knives or they've got heavy equipment, and I don't want them to think about the fact that I'm there. All right, for non-photographers, there are 3 things that you need to be concerned about, particularly if you're concerned about whether you have enough light. Light is what allows you to take a photograph. The photograph is a digital recording of how light reacts when it's hitting the physical objects in the scene in front of you. You control the light in 3 ways, but each way affects the image in certain ways. So the first thing is the aperture. The aperture is how wide or how narrow the opening on the lens is. If you open it wide open, which would be the lower number, f1.8, f2.8, that's a wide open aperture. It means you're letting in more light, which means your shutter speed doesn't have to be slow. But if you open it up wide, then your depth of field is very narrow. So if you want to get different objects all in focus, and they're different lengths away from your lens, then you need a narrower aperture, or you're not going to get it. And certain things will be blurry, and other things within the depth of field will be sharp. And sometimes that's a great thing. You want to draw the viewer's attention to certain things, and one of the ways you do it is by having those in focus and the others not so much. Shutter speed, if the slower the shutter speed, the more light it lets in, and that's good. But if the shutter speed is too slow, then you have blur, because if you have moving people or moving objects, they're going to blur because they're moving faster than your shutter can capture it. I use 200 to 1/200th of a second to 250th generally, because which is a fairly fast shutter, because I actually have a tremor in my fingers, and if I have the shutter lower than that, I induce blur into the image, which I don't want to do. So I keep the shutter there and work around it with the other things. The ISO is a measure of sensitivity of the sensor in the camera. The higher the ISO, the less light it takes to make an image, but as the ISO climbs up, the image tends to get noise, or in the old days we said grain, and the picture doesn't look as sharp, and it's got this disturbing amount of noise and artifacts in it. So you only want the ISO as high as you need it to be. Other than that, all I do is I try to watch the people, find a scene that looks interesting, wait for the people to do something interesting in that scene, and then shoot them from different angles, different distance, height, low. And I take as many shots as I think it warrants. It used to be we had to be concerned about the cost of film, but now that we're all using, or most people are using digital cameras, there's no sense taking one shot if I can take 10 or 20 shots, and if only one of them turns out, I win, because I only need one shot of that situation or that person or that image. I just want to make sure that one of the however many shots I took is going to be in focus and useful. So that's all I'm going to say about the technical stuff. And now we move on. So this is Kizo, my favorite sushi restaurant. They're just closing up for the night. On the right, you can see the last two customers leaving, and you see the table in the foreground still has sushi on it. That's for all the workers there. As soon as they finish cleaning up the kitchen, they have their dinner. There's another restaurant in Philadelphia called Catahoula, which was a New Orleans bar restaurant. I think they may have closed during the pandemic. This was the chef on for the night. I didn't ask him why he was wearing dark glasses. It was 10 o'clock at night, but the fire, I think, was intentional, and quickly went out after he finished cooking that steak or whatever it was. One of the servers. And the bartender for the night. Now, I said a minute ago that I never go someplace without in some way being embedded and having permission. This is sort of an exception. I was trying to get the Philadelphia Electric Company, PECO, to let me go with one of their crews at night. And I think at least twice they said, no, it's not the right time, maybe later. And of course, later never came until the electricity went out on my street. And we were in darkness for about 18 hours or more. And if I recall, it was either awfully hot, I think it was awfully hot. The electricity, the air conditioning was not working. So when the crew came and they were out there, I asked the supervisor, I identified who I was. I said I was one of the people who didn't have any electricity, and as long as I was, had to be outside to see, would they mind if I photographed? And he was a nice guy and he said, sure. And so I spent a couple hours photographing while they worked. And this poor unfortunate guy was the one chosen. The Lost Bread Company is a fairly new, really good bakery in Philadelphia. They do all different kinds of breads. They invited me in for a night, and they have a giant commercial bakery in this building with a very giant oven. They are making cuts in the loaves before they get baked. The woman on the right is the chief baker. They're cleaning up molds for the dough. And the dishwasher, man after my own heart. We also have a new bagel baker right around the corner from where we live, and they invited me in. This is the night crew. The baker is making everything bagels, and so she is sprinkling the everything seeds onto the bagels. The guy on the extreme right and the second guy from the left are the owners and the founders of this bakery. But they work nights, same as everybody else. Laying the bagels out. A shot from them in the from outside. These are the night watch for the Delaware River Waterfront Corporation, which runs Penn's Landing and other commercial and amusement sites that used to be piers as part of the Philadelphia Harbor. This was also shot at ISO 16,000. The Philadelphia Fire Department has a firehouse right near where I live. Most of what I've done with them has been inside the firehouse or directly outside the firehouse. I'm hoping to get more and better access to their work in the future, and we will see. That's a work in progress. The captain on the for his platoon on that night, just hanging out. A number of the firefighters are very good cooks, and they have a kitchen as well as the outdoor grill. And it was grilled chicken that night. Playing chess. The television is always on. And you have to wonder about the taste of some of the younger firefighters about the things they want to watch. But shining shoes. Perfect example, the Three Stooges. This was like within the last year. So this is one of the two shots where I actually used a small travel tripod and shot this at a half a second exposure, and so the truck is the squad car is blurred. Everything else is in focus and well lit. For those of you that like moving vehicles, this is it. And ditto for the ambulance. So that was it for the night work project. But I thought people might want to see just some other photos taken at night. And so I'll run through some of those quickly, and then we can go to any questions or comments. This was part of Occupy Philadelphia in 2011. This was a night vigil after the Charlottesville riots in 2017. This is a small public park in Hanoi, Vietnam, because where else are you going to find a statue of Vladimir Lenin? But the park is inhabited at night by all kinds of people who come play games with their children, dance, do exercises, ride little motorized cars. And it's a very nice place, and it was warm. An exercise class to music. I went with a friend who was a former war photographer and correspondent, and we went to the cremation of King Sihanouk in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Those of you who are closer to my age on this call will remember that King Sihanouk played an important role in the history of Cambodia, and particularly in the history of the Vietnam War. So the Cambodian government built this temporary structure that you see here to house the cremation ceremony, and where the people, the high level guests come to pay their respects. This is the same picture a few hours later. Next door to that structure is the National Palace. As you can see, it has a picture of King Sihanouk, and thousands of Cambodians come to light joss sticks, incense, in memory of the dead king. A group of Buddhist nuns and monks praying for the soul of the dead king. Cambodian citizens. This photo is from Camagüey, Cuba, which is about the middle of the country, both north-south and east-west. And it's just a night, and we were taking a walk after dinner. In the city of Santiago de Cuba, which is in the extreme southeastern part of the country, every year they have Carnival, which takes place in July, mainly the hottest time of the year. I can't tell you how hot it was. But these are the people who will be riding the floats or performing in the parade, and it's before they get to the actual parade route where all the stands are set up for people who watch. So if you will, this is kind of backstage for the performers. One of the floats getting ready to go into the parade. Some of the performers. I should say that these pictures for of the carnival, I actually used a handheld flash to illuminate. Otherwise, I wouldn't get it. I wouldn't have gotten any of these photos. She brightened up considerably a few moments later. Another one of the performers, but if you look over his right shoulder, there's a security person who's looking at me very suspiciously. People were very open to being photographed in Cuba generally, and at this event. The police and the security people were not so receptive. And this was the kind of look that I got on more than one occasion. And this is the guy who produced terrific pork sandwiches for the delight of people like me and the people viewing the parade. And that's it. I would be more than happy to try and answer any questions or to take comments.
Over what period of years did you shoot all of these pictures, Ted?
Generally speaking, they started in 2010 and went up to the present. So, you know, some of them I shot over a period of a night or two. Some of them I shot over a period of a couple weeks. Others I've been shooting, the junk dance company I've been shooting for 10 years. And I still do. So it just varies.
And how many cameras did you go through?
About 6 or 7.
Wow.
But the nice thing, it like computers, although the capabilities, the technical capabilities of the cameras improve vastly, they wind up costing about the same amount as the last one that I got 2 years before. So it's like getting computers. So it's not quite as bad as it sounds.
Wow. They're beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Out of all of the photos that you've taken, do you have some favorites?
I'm sure I do. And somewhere they're in this this group. I think it depends. It's like I don't know how to answer. I like the ones that show the people showing their true selves, or what they're doing and what they're feeling at the time. So the revenue attendant who was leaning over the rail looking in the lights of Philadelphia, I like that one a lot because I think it's a successful photo technically and composition, and it also shows who this guy is. And other photos I'm sure are like that, but I don't know which others to choose at this point. David.
Ted, did you find?
Yes.
So can I jump in, Ted?
Yes.
Yeah, so I heard what you said about the dance company having the flat light and choosing black and white. But one of the things that struck me and has often struck me about your best night work is that night often involves really interesting colors. And so I'd be just curious a little more, because there were some bodies of work in black and white, and I kept kind of wanting to know more about the color. And then there were bodies of work in color, including some of the stuff in Cambodia and Cuba, where I said, yeah, that color adds another layer of story, atmosphere, etc. Is that also your thinking? Because you seem to be mixing a black and white and color. So I'm curious about that a little more.
Sure. And because I knew you were going to be on this call, David, I actually went back and I looked at some of those photos that I had black and white, and I just added the color back in. And I at least for those photos, I didn't see that the color added anything. And they just looked, to me, they looked flat. And I couldn't have as much contrast as I could if I made them black and white. You and I have had this discussion before, and we have a slight difference of opinion. I usually bow to your greater experience and expertise, but I left them black and white because that was how I did them then, and it was part of, I wanted to show the sort of development of my thinking in the in how to do them. And in fact, on the fire department ones, I turned some of those into black and white to see what they look like. And I agreed with you that especially fire departments with the flaming red color, which is kind of the signature, you cut that out and you're really cutting out a lot of the emotional content of the photos.
I'd like to ask you a question, if I could,
Sure.
about your maximum ISO. Like, at what kind of numbers do you have any kind of problems compensating for that in the software? And then a second question, to tell us a little bit about the lenses that you like to use and how important is the speed of a lens. I mean, you're looking at the 2.8 lens, or are you able to do this with a, an f4, etc.? Thank you.
Right. I have found that generally 16,000 ISO gives me an image that I can apply noise reduction to and clarity through Adobe Lightroom in post-production that will give me a photo where the first thing somebody says is not, gee, it's really grainy, although that's a nice photo. If you saw the one of the guy on the bicycle, that was 16,000. I think that's been sort of the upper limit of any successful photo that I've made. In terms of lenses, when I don't really know what I'm going to see or what's going to happen when I'm with a particular group, I use two cameras. One's got a 24 to 70 millimeter lens zoom, and the other one has a 70 to 200. And I try to use the 24-70 as much as possible. But sometimes if, they're doing something far away, or there's a fire in the kitchen or something, right? I'm going to be a ways, and I'm going to use longer lens. But clearly the 24-70 is my preference, and I keep that on the newer camera.
Hi, Ted. This is
Yes.
Vanessa. This is less of a technical question and more of a people question. And let me turn my camera on. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to know, when you went into the workplace, what kind of energy, what was the vibe? What was the energy of a night place, night worker atmosphere versus maybe a day worker atmosphere? And secondly, and I know it's kind of a longer question, was your presence considered a welcome presence, or did they kind of, because they had that vibe at night, was it more of an imposition initially?
Yeah.
Should I say?
Excellent questions. With respect to their initial reaction, I've been lucky that there was enough preparation, happening, that nobody reacted visibly concerned, and it's because I think that I made sure that everybody knew why I was there, and I didn't just assume that the supervisor had spread the word. So I'd go up to somebody and say, "Hi, I'm Ted Lieverman. I'm a photographer. I'm doing a story about people that work at night. Jim in the office, said it was okay. How you doing? You don't mind if I photograph you while you're working?" And I've usually not gotten any problems. Once in a while, there's somebody who says, "What are you doing here?" And I explain, and they calm down, or they say, I don't want to be photographed. And I go, "That's fine, no problem. I'll work around you, no problem." And it's not a problem. I just stay away from that person. There are plenty of other people to photograph. What was the first question again?
And the first question was the vibe, the atmosphere, the energy of the night worker, versus maybe a daytime atmosphere.
Yeah. And the answer is that they have a routine. All the people I photographed, they know what they're doing, what they're supposed to be doing. So in the firehouse, for example, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm there. half of them or 3/4 of them are asleep in the bunk room. The night watch is there. He's watching some horribly violent movie, right? And I'm standing there. I'm sitting there near him, and suddenly the alarm comes in. It's a long bell. It flashes on the screen. Lights flash, right? And he'll call the what it is. Usually it's the ambulance, and nobody moves for that except the ambulance drivers, and they sort of walk out to the truck. They have a special call, and I've only heard it a few times, when it's a long call, and the watch officer yells, everybody up, high rise. And people leap to their feet. And within 30 seconds, the first car is out of there, and the trucks are right behind it. And the firefighters are leaping to the back of the engine and the ladder, and they're putting on their gear as they're driving off. And the lights are going, the sirens are going, right? And they have done this so many times that they know exactly what they're supposed to do and how fast, and they really perform very well, right? And so they go off, and that 30 seconds before, most of them were asleep, and the rest were, eating the donuts in the kitchen, or drinking coffee. So they know exactly what they should be doing at any given time, and it's different for every workspace.
Ted,
Yes.
good question. Your photos are great, but I might be a little biased.
And your name again is?
Yeah. My question is similar to Vanessa's. I was thinking, you talked about when you went to a place that you were sort of planning and all that, but when you go out in the street or wherever you happen to be, do you get a lot of pushback in like a particular area or with particular people? They're very hesitant to have you do that, or what's the vibe around those where you're just sort of there?
Yeah, for this project, the night work project, except for the guy from the Philadelphia Electric, I don't go around with people or go up to people at night unless they know I'm coming and
Okay.
and they approve it. Right. Street photography, there are actually a couple of great street photographers on this call, who, they're on the street and they photograph people they don't know all the time. And I tend not to do that so much. I'll go to demonstrations where certain demonstrators will say, I don't want to be in your photographs. And I say, fine. And I go on to the next person. So I don't have that kind of problem very much.
Well, that's good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Yes, the gentleman in the red sweater.
So I'm a little prejudiced because I am also knowledgeable, but I know your work has moved into film. Motion pictures, have you done anything in terms of motion pictures of using night and some of these same situations to do motion picture stories? Just because a lot of the things you were talking about, I was immediately thinking there's also a movement potential there in the future.
The answer is I have not. And the explanation for that is actually a probably long conversation that I've been meaning to have with you, particularly about that in the future, and we should do that. But the answer is I've not. I've found that it's like, it's two different sides of my brain to operate the video as well as instead of taking the shots. And I think you and I have discussed that most people who try to do both, like the reporter that gets sent out to report a story, capture some video and also take some pictures. And usually 2 out of the 3 suffer. So no, I have not done it yet, but we'll talk.
Am I
Can you hear me
live?
okay? Oh,
Yes, Ed,
Oh, okay, you got me.
I got you.
I was just curious about sleep patterns, not only for yourself when you're on a long-term project, but also the night workers themselves, because it's not natural to be working all night. And the long-range effects of that type of schedule is generally detrimental to their health. And is there ever a discussion that you might be having with those type of people? What's their life like? Do they get decent sleep?
Great question. I actually had that conversation with one of the firefighters a few weeks ago. They have a schedule where they're on 2 nights in a row, and then they're off for 2 days, and then they're on day shift, I think, for 2 days, and then they go back to the night shift. And he was a young guy. He'd been on the force a couple years, I guess. And I figured he said, no, it's fine. I don't have any problem. I kind of like it. And, I don't know how representative he is. I find that if I'm up all night with one of these, I can't sleep for the next 2 or 3 nights. It takes me that long to get adjusted again for the next day. So it does have deleterious effects if you're doing it for a long time. But I'm not there to lecture them to how they should take care of themselves. But
Yeah, because the adjustments they have to make. Actually, I have a granddaughter who's a nurse, and they have these 12-hour shifts, and some weeks they're working 6 at night until 6 in the morning, or 7 until 7, and then it reverses back, and you wonder, my God, how does your system adjust to that?
right. Well, she needs a union to begin with.
Well, they probably do have one if they work with a hospital,
It depends. Nancy, you have your hand up?
Yeah, hi. Enjoyed looking at your work, and some of it looked familiar. That was fun. And I was just wondering, how do you see where do you see yourself timeline in the project? Is this where do you see it going?
A very good question that I have been asking myself. The pandemic really put a kink in everything. I was not out photographing for quite a while, and then I'd go back in, and then the virus would take a U-turn and climb back up, and so I'd stay away, and I still don't know where it is. So I'm still trying to hopefully work with the fire department. And if I get into a couple of other places, I'll continue that. But I really need to work on to find some new projects. David knows that I've been working on a documentary film about our own Harvey Finkel and his remarkable career as a documentary photographer. And I'm close to finishing the rough cut, but I really need to spend a lot more time just finishing that up, and then decide what else I want to work on. You've caught me at an awkward time.
Ted, I enjoyed this very much. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Very good. Good to
Okay,
see you.
right.
That's my father-in-law, in case.
Right.
These projects, are they self-funded? Do you have grants? And what is the final output you're looking to generate from these projects?
Great question. Usually what I've tried to do is photograph it. I self-fund it and then try to sell it for publication. That become, depending on what the topic is, it's harder or easier to sell. But there is a tremendous competition, as I'm sure you know, for grants, for prizes, for and just getting published. Now that every living person on the face of the earth has a camera in their pocket, you know, they might not take the best pictures, but you know, they'll still get published. I took photographs at a demonstration in Philadelphia, including a rabbi getting arrested, and I got an email from, and I sent a couple of copies of the photos to the rabbi who I knew, and a few days later I got a email from Haaretz, which is one of the premier newspapers in Israel. It's sort of the New York Times of Israel. And they said, we saw you have some great pictures. We'd love to publish them if you could just sign this release. And I read the release, and the release says, you give us your pictures, we control them, we can use them for absolutely anything now or in the future, and we can dice them, do anything with them. And we don't pay you anything. And I wrote back what I thought under the circumstances was a relatively, civil email. It said, well, I don't think I can sign this, but I'm a big fan of Haaretz. For the one-time usage for, in the regular newspaper, I would charge you below my usual rate, and I would charge you $75. They immediately write back, gosh, thanks, Ted. We've actually made other arrangements. We've got some photos. And I looked to see what photos they used, and they were photos that somebody I know who was there taking photos with their iPhone, right? And it was like, where's the focus? Where's the subject? Where's the composition? But it was free. If Haaretz isn't paying, so, but I keep pursuing at least some, recognition or dare I say it, money. I've found that most of the documentary photographers I know, or independent photojournalists, basically supplement their passion work with corporate work. You know, that's fine. I understand that. My feeling is I was a union lawyer. We have a song in the union movement, "Which side are you on?" And I'm on the side of the unions, not the side of the corporations. And I don't want to do corporate work, right? When I was a lawyer, they were billing me out at $620 an hour. I'd rather do 2 hours of legal work, and fund a project that way than, do the annual report for some corporation. Others may differ.
Say, Ted, hi, it's Alan.
Hi, Alan.
Hey, I do want to revisit the whole point about working with the unions and getting your permission to kind of get in and take photographs. Have you used any of those relationships with some of your former clients in order to develop some of your projects?
So far, I have found that the unions are the most resistant to letting for reasons that I suspect have to do with potential liability or discipline. And they don't see it as a benefit to, unless it's something completely controlled by them, a meet and greet, everybody stands there, I mean, the AFL-CIO Lawyers Committee hired me to photograph their conferences, but those were all lawyers, and
Right.
Hire may not be exactly the right word, but
yeah. But it's interesting because I love those pictures. My father used to work shift work, and it just kind of demonstrates what most people just don't realize. And I thought it would be kind of to the best interest of the worker movement to illustrate that type of work.
I would have thought that myself, but but we'll see what happens in the future.
Okay. Well, it's good seeing you. Take care.
Good seeing you. Thanks for joining. Anyone else?
Hi, it's Linda. I was wondering if you ever give any of the photos to the people you photograph, or to the group for them to have an exhibit inside their own kind of department.
The answer is yes. Generally, what I do is within 2 or 3 days of me being there, I'll send 10, a dozen, whatever, photos to my contact, and urge him or her to show them to the people. Sometimes when it's someplace that I've gone back to more than once, I'll make 8 by 10 prints of specific individuals and hand them out to them. And they really appreciate them. And that's a great way of building cementing the relationship for going back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've done that with the senior center too. Yeah. Yeah.
Also, when I go back to the fire department, they always have dinner and invite me there. So I always bring 24 donuts for them. The donuts seem to go over.
It works.
very, very well. Yes. Michael, you have your hand up.
Yeah, great. You got some really great access, to these places. And tell us a little bit about, how you made that happen.
And the answer is different ways at different places. A lot of them I cold called their media relations person. And that worked, for example, at SEPTA for the Transit Authority. It absolutely did not work for several other places. But I found, somebody I knew. In the case of the fire department, the firehouse is 2 blocks from where I live. So I wandered in one day and just asked if I could speak to the captain, and he was fine with it. And that's how I made the connection. So it's some combination of just audacity and friendliness.
And what do you tell them you're doing?
I always tell them the truth, which is I'm a documentary photographer. I'm photographing a project about people that work at night. I know you have a night shift. I'd really like to come in and do it. Here's what I do. And I have a fairly standard email that makes several points, which is I'm not looking for funding. This is journalism. I have training in safety and first aid and working in conflict zones, and I'll obey any rules that you have. I'll cover you on my insurance. And if you have any questions, we'll work it out. And that seems to work. And then I send them links to my website and my some work that I've done.
Thank you very much.
Not at all. Art,
Can you hear me okay?
there's an electronic hand that's up for Art Braidman.
Hi. How do I,
No.
can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you and I can see you.
Oh, great. Well, I must say your photos are magnificent and they show great humanity and a great concern for your fellow man and woman. And I love you brought out the personalities of the individuals who are working there. I guess a lot of people feel like maybe they're cogs in a big machine, but you focus on the individual. And that's very wonderful. I like close proximity where there's a person who is sharply in focus with the background nice and soft and out of focus with a relatively fast position on a medium or slightly wide angle-ish lens, perhaps. I see you have a lot of beautiful books in the background in your library. Are there a lot of photo books back there?
Actually, not here. All my photo books are downstairs. These books are mainly history, biography. Mainly history.
Cool. Let me ask you this question. Who might be your influences in photography, and in particular documentary photography? And also, might there be a street photography angle to this as well?
Well, I can tell you that 2 of my influences that I depend on a great deal are on this call. One is David Wells in the shockingly red-orange cover-up. And I'm not sure if he's still on, Harvey Finkel, who's been a long time, yes, there's Harvey, who's been a longtime friend and mentor to me. And I've learned a great deal from both of them. The photographer that I think in some ways influenced me the most are the Vietnam War photographers. I think the first time I saw Larry Burroughs' photo story, One Day with Yankee Papa 13, where he flies on a US helicopter that's ferrying Vietnamese troops in the early part of the war. And he follows a crew chief through that mission. I thought was just one of the best things I had ever seen, and was my understanding of what a photo story was like. But also the photography of James Knockway,
yeah.
Ron Haviv, a number of the war photographers, even though that's not what I am. But I admire their work. I admire the work they do and their courage. And I've learned a lot from following their work.
Are someone was able to maybe find a publication of that may contain some of your photos?
One hopes so in the future, but right now I think if you can go to my website, which was on the final slide, but if you just put my name, Ted Lieverman, into Google, virtually everything shows up.
Great. Well, thank you very much. It was a beautiful show.
Thank you. Anything else? Anyone else? All right, Eileen, Adam, you want to roll the credits?
Yeah, no, it's Eileen's turn to say thank you, 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 thank you. I want everyone to have a healthy night, a happy night, and save next month, third Tuesday, 7 o'clock for an exciting presentation, subject to be announced. So thank you. Thank
All
you.
right, good night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right, bye-bye. Bye-bye.